We used to believe that democracy began with ancient Athens. Now we believe that it is as old as humanity. We also know that it doesn't last, and that the dictatorships that replace it lead to brutality and civil collapse. Is there a way out of this cycle? Many are trying to find it.
In our last video, we talked about doing a diagnostic on democracy, a reassessment, and that we would start with theory. In other political systems, there is not much need for theory. Those with power will rule for their own benefit, period. Democracy is more complicated than that. In theory, the people have the power, but people don't vote on the budget or specific bills. Their representatives do. How do citizens select their representatives? How do they ensure that representatives vote in the people's interest? How do the people ensure that government really is by the people and for the people and not just a charade? You can say that people rule, but there is a big gap between that and the complex logistics of running a government. How to square the circle. Let's start with what is being called the folk or naive theory of democracy. The folk theory assumes that the majority of voters have an adequate understanding of the three necessary parts of a policy decision: the policy issue, the alternatives, and the candidate's positions. They vote for the candidate that has the same opinion the voter has, and with that mandate, the winning candidate will then act accordingly. According to the folk view, the majority of voters will be adequately informed, and the ones that are not will vote more or less randomly. And the random votes will mostly cancel each other out, leaving the informed voters to make the final decision. We have what has been termed a market of ideas, and this is actually what we are taught in school. Let's use as an example a bill to borrow money to build a new fire station. The three necessary parts would be as follows. The policy issue: most voters should understand that we are talking about a new fire station so that response to fire emergencies will be faster and that we would pay for it by issuing bonds. The alternative: by rejecting the bill, we would not have bonds to pay off in the future, but we would likely have worse fires and potentially higher insurance premiums to pay. And the candidates: it is assumed that the average voter will settle on an opinion and know which political candidate also holds that opinion. What has been discovered is that most voters fail on at least one of these three factors. Even when the voter is quite adamant about their voting choice, often they do not really understand the position they are holding, or they don't understand the alternative, or they don't know which candidates share their position. With our fire station example, a voter may not understand what the bond is for, may not know how it will be paid, and may not understand the consequences of rejecting the bill. Additionally, the voter may still vote for the candidate that supports the opposite position due to platform confusion. The last point, voting for the wrong candidate, according to a 2006 study, happens around 30% of the time. I use the term most voters. How many is most? What researchers have known for decades now is that in general, 85% of the voters are not informed enough to get all those three necessary factors correct. Only about 15% of voters make informed choices and correctly choose a candidate that will execute their preference. Most simply fail to understand the issue in at least one significant way. The phenomenon of the largely uninformed voter has been recognized among scholars since the debate began. In fact, the term the rationally ignorant voter was coined to acknowledge this. Voters are rationally ignorant because on the one hand, their leisure time is rare and valuable, and on the other hand, their vote is dramatically diluted. They have jobs, families, children, debts, and other responsibilities that suck up their spare time, spending much of that leisure time to bone up on issues that are decided by a million other uninformed voters would be, in most scholars' opinions, rather irrational. Additionally, the idea that the uninformed voters will vote randomly and cancel each other out also does not seem an accurate reflection of reality. Anecdotal evidence suggests that uninformed voters are heavily drawn to two things: the more emphatically dramatic and emotional argument, and the unrealistically easy and painless solution. National policy issues are much more complicated than the fire station example, and politicians try pretty hard to be everything to everybody. So I suppose we shouldn't be surprised by the confusion. But an uninformed, confused voting body renders the folk democracy theory completely invalid. We do not live in the democracy that we were taught in school. We live in something else. I should note that adding to the rationally ignorant voters that we have had since the studies began, in the 21st century we have a new phenomenon. Perhaps we could call it the irrational Illuminati voter. Voters that are not simply uninformed, but had knowledge of an imaginary reality that they claim to believe in. Only the Republican Party is, at least for the moment, able to leverage this group wholesale, but there is no reason to assume other parties will never try their hand at it. In any case, it does damage to the idea that ignorant voters will be randomly distributed and self-canceling. A more sophisticated theory, originating in economist circles, was proposed in the 1950s, called the spatial model of democracy. It is an elegant theory that is immediately appealing but has its own problems. We will look into that model in the next video. I will see you there.
I'm going to add a postscript here. I will refer to the rationally ignorant voters a lot in future videos, so perhaps this would be a good time to clarify who they are. If you're thinking these are unintelligent people, you would be wrong. Perhaps uninformed would be a better word rather than ignorant. These include very intelligent people from all walks of life. They are united only in that they aren't fans of politics, would rather not read a lot about it, but usually vote because they believe it is their responsibility. They are united only by the fact that they don't know enough to actually get the issues, the alternatives, or the candidates accurately. Cool. With that established, let's get on to the next video.